This is sort of a call out for people to just maybe take serious what we're trying to do here on this broadcast.
Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum. In the media, overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output, but very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time, cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David DuByne.
I'm James White, and I'm joined by Dave DuByne from Adapt 2030 YouTube channel.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the New Madrid fault area around Mississippi. And if nobody that's listening has read Upheaval by John Casey, he goes into great detail what would happen in the first 48 hours after the ruptures of all. There would be no gasoline in New York City because all the pipes that come through. Like literally within 48 hours, there would be no fuel across the entire East Coast from Mississippi over because everything's pushed, natural gas, oil, the coal lines to get to the power plant. Unless it's in a regional area that has coal, nothing's moving. Even your electricity will shut off. No fuel, no electricity. But how prepared are you for that? I mean, it's warning signs in the same area that you would look if you're an observer to see a cycle repeating itself. Well, let's just take two of them perhaps. All these microquakes and semi-large ones up to 3.0 that the USGS routinely tries to erase from their records because they don't want to show you an uptick and buildup in that seismic area starting to come alive again. At a small level, is a 3.0 earthquake a giant take down a building? No. But when they didn't have 3.0 earthquakes now and you're getting 10 a week, that's an uptick. Secondly, the Mississippi River in that area has gone bone dry almost to the point where they can only load barges to 1/3 the capacity to get those grain shipments down the river right now. Something broke, and I do feel that the water is seeping in down into the New Madrid fault. Somehow there was a fracture in that river. It's not specifically just in right where the zone is of the seismic fault area, but it extends further up as well. People cannot explain, after all the record flooding we've had this year, how this water just disappeared down into the record low where they can't even run barges. They need to dredge. They can't get barge traffic through there. So the slowdown of getting the grain shipment out this year, nobody's talking about that either. I don't know why. But if you go on to YouTube, it's Mr. BBB333, I think is his channel. Hey, I'm sorry if I misquoted exactly what it was. He's done like 3 or 4 videos on this Mississippi low water level, and people send him images all the time. See, again, since he was the first one to bring this to the public's attention, everybody looked to him to be an expert. So now they're just continually giving him photos and updates on the situation. So he's become the repository for the information on this particular event. I want you as listeners to be the same exact conduit for your communities, trying to explain what the grand solar minimum is, what the effects on our weather are going to be, how it's going to affect crop production, and how it's going to have all these other knock-on effects of higher volcanism, higher food prices, and the introduction of cryptocurrencies to try to alleviate and get us an extra couple years before the pricing will actually hurt. The fingerprints all over this seismic zone in New Madrid is waking up again on a 200 or 400-year cycle. Nobody's paying attention except very, very few observant minds.
And since I have been talking about our need moving forward in this new society that we're entering as our global grain production starts to be reduced in yield, your food prices are going to skyrocket. And I mean skyrocket, not just doubling or tripling, something like 5 or 10 times higher by 2020 at the very least. TrueLeafMarket.com. I really want to talk about growing your own food, which will be a necessity moving forward. They've been around since 1974, heirloom and organic seeds. Since I've started talking about them in my videos, I have a lot of people write and say that they've previously ordered, that they know the owner, having great results, good customer service. They quite enjoyed the seed quality as well. And there's so many ways that we can go about growing different types of vegetables that we're going to need. Microgreens are incredibly nutritious. They're super fast to grow. In less than a week, you can have something that you can eat. And we know the benefits of microgreens. All you have to do is use a search engine and look up vitamin, mineral, nutrient content of microgreens. You'll be shocked. Also, sprouts. We can get those a little bit taller, a little more dense, a little bit larger volume on the vegetation mass coming off of there. So how do you know what kind of sprouts to grow? How about wheatgrass or herbs? What about different types of herbs that we can add to our foods? Now, what I just described to you, there's a full range of starter guides there at trueleafmarket.com for you to take a look at. Even if it's just for your own knowledge and you don't purchase something from them, at least get the information so you know how to grow microgreens, you know how to grow sprouts, you understand what some of the herbs are for. And not only that, they have wheatgrass and grain seeds. So when I'm talking about grain-growing regions going offline, we just need to look back in history and see where across the planet there was difficulty growing grains when this grand solar minimum intensified and the jet stream started wandering just like they're doing today due to a decreased magnetosphere that does not hold our jet streams locked in their traditional flows. Grains are one thing, herb seeds are another, cover crops, something different, but whatever you do, organic seeds are going to be a necessity because you can save those seeds and then grow them the next season, which you unequivocally cannot do with GMO. TrueLeafMarket.com. Use the link below and give yourself of organic and heirloom seeds.
You talk about the story you mentioned earlier here. You talked about the Antarctic supervolcano is melting the ice caps from within. What in the world's going on down there in Antarctica? I don't know if we've talked on this broadcast, but before in the other format when we were doing the Liberty Brothers before, we talked about all the stuff that's going on there in Antarctica, about all of the activity that's going on there. On another web channels, my websites, Northwest Liberty News, I interviewed a vendor who actually got a call from Antarctica and they wanted to ship a whole unbelievable amount of food down there to handle all of the activity. What do you think, first of all, about the weather? And I say the weather, the melting of the ice, the big chunks of ice breaking off down there. What do you think about the climate surrounding Antarctica? And then what do you think about all the activity going on there, David? Have you done any research on that?
I did a whole video about the ice hole off of the ice sheet, and they can't explain it. So I was calling the IPCC. They're trying to blame CO2 on this crack and the hole in the ice. So I was calling them a bunch of ice holes.
Nice. I like it.
Because this hole is like 500 miles wide by 500 miles wide, and they're trying to say that, oh, it's a Pollyanna. It comes back on a cycle. And I'm like, wait a sec. Last Pollyanna was maybe 30, 40, maybe 50 miles wide at the widest 48 miles, something like this, in the 1980s. But this one is literally almost 15 times larger. And it has to be from underwater volcanic activity, because when you look at the Larsen B, that huge crack going down there, that was from under melting, not from above. And they always need to come up with these convenient excuses. And, I read those articles that they had written saying, well, see, this ice break didn't come from climate change, from CO2, but we need to be wary of climate change, and we really need to work on all the global warming, and they bring it right back in. So if you didn't read those two sentences in the paragraph that said it's not exactly from CO2, this huge crack, if you were skimming the article, you might have missed that, and you would have thought it was attributed back to CO2 warming. That's why I call them the whole IPCC. If the science is settled, give us our money back. Quit taking the funds. If it's such a settled science, you no longer need funding, period. Close it down, end of story. We already know how the climate's going to behave. Your models are already out there. None of them work. There was 1 out of 98 models that was even remotely close to the true temperatures of our planet. So you're done. Time's up. Bye-bye. Give us our money back. I want a tax break, and I want a refund, and I want interest on the money you stole from us. That's because there's so many volcanoes underwater melting around Antarctica.
And then do you think that there's been speculation, David, and this is a little bit outlandish, a little bit out, like a woo-woo here, and I'm not saying that I know anything because I haven't been there. I haven't seen any evidence. But the general consensus among the people that research this stuff, not mainline, but alternative, is that they've discovered some sort of ancient technology perhaps down there in Antarctica that has been discovered since things have melted away. Now, there was another YouTuber, they measured some sort of a pulse or some unknown pulse or unexplainable pulse that was coming from Antarctica. And this was supposed to be apparently some of these ancient technologies that they found. Now, like I said, is it possible? Geez, these days, nothing surprises me anymore. But, I don't know if I'm ready to say yet that these are crazy ancient technologies. But, David, I'm just going to be curious to know. I know it's not really about the weather, but certainly a lot going on in Antarctica. Have you heard about this theory about the ancient technologies? And, you seem to be, for some reason, you cut out. Am I cutting out on your end? Do you hear me cutting out?
Yeah, occasionally. But it's interesting the points we're talking about when we cut out. That's what I find most interesting.
Yeah, right on, huh?
Some of the normal drivelly stuff. Hey, the sky is blue today. There's lions in Africa, whatever. That won't get cut out. But the minute you start talking a little something controversial. So I'll ask all the viewers and listeners out there right now, when we do get cut out, myself or Jim, notice the points that we're talking about when we get cut, because when I do interviews with other people in the universe and we start talking about cycles and Velikovsky, influences from outer planets and different types, all the planets are showing changes of climate change at the moment, electrical activity on all of our planets in the solar system. This kind of stuff routinely will get cut when we're talking about bombardment from space and cycles in time. Now, you got to think, though, our planet is continually moving. And I'll bring that, and I forget who I listened to that told me this, and I'm just repeating something I heard. Great Salt Lake City. Everybody might know this place. It's a huge salt pan. Great Salt Lake. Okay, that salt is sea salt. It got up in there, and then there was evaporation. Okay, that valley's only so with water, and then it evaporated. You're still not going to get thousands and thousands of foot thick salt in there. It had to have been a repeating cycle. Now, how many times has that thing, through catastrophic earth changes, been filled and refilled, dried out and refilled again, until we get to this 1,000-foot salt level compacted salt that we have today? That's not a one-time, one-off event where it filled in a green. I've been to salt pans. I traveled to Mauritius Island, and that was one of my things, is the salt dehydration areas is cool. It's all lava rock, and then you got the white salt against the green mountains, and then you got the lava rock that's black. Really interesting. You get very little salt from that amount of water. Very little. About repeating cycles of time. Who's to say that these continents aren't in the same place? Because we routinely find through the geologic record that, they got flooding at 1,500 feet where they have thousands of different animal bones, like in a tumultuous flood event, squeezed against the side of a cave by floods at 1,500 feet up in what's considered 1,500 foot above sea level now. Who's to say that our Earth hasn't shifted, and there were previous societies before us that had built out cities completely, and then in a flash, whoosh, it was shoved down there, frozen over. How many people do you know? It's illegal for you to fly over the North Pole. You'll be shot down. So what's up there that they're not letting us see?
This video is brought to you by our friends at TrueLeafMarket.com. Heirloom and organic seeds for any grow zone on our planet.